Talking about DWI cases and breath tests today. There's two types of breath tests in DWI cases. First is what we call a PBT or a portable breath test. This is a small handheld instrument that an officer has on the side of the road. He may ask you to get out of your car, blow into this device. They have these removable mouthpieces, so you know that it's sanitary, I guess. And then he'll ask you to blow and continue to blow into this thing to get some kind of reading on the side of the road. Normally, officers do this at the end of a DWI investigation where they do field sobriety tests, the walk and turn, horizontal gaze, nystagmus, and one leg stand. And it's not really likely that they're going to give you this PBT unless they already want to arrest you, or it's like the last, they were kind of thinking they weren't going to arrest you. And then they just want to see what your number is at. So I see no reason to ever take a portable breath test uh, from a police officer because he's either already made the decision to arrest you or he's using it to see if he's got a high enough number or alcohol at all to arrest you. And he already knows he has a weak case. So, in general, I would not ever take a portable breath test. There's another type of breath test as well in these DWI cases, and it's called an Intoxilizer 9000. When I started as a prosecutor many years ago, they were on the Intoxilizer 5000, which I thought was kind of funny because it sounds like some machine out of the 1950s. But in any case, this is an instrument that can be used in a trial. The result from it is something that can be used at trial. Only the Intoxilizer 9000 can do that. It is something that's going to be held back at the jail in a secure like box. Sometimes they'll have it in. It's supposed to have a key, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But neither of them are really trusted by juries 100%. And so that's why breath tests are somewhat more likely to get a better result than in a blood test, because most people, you know, when you go to the doctor, you don't they don't ask you, here, blow into this and we'll figure out if you have cancer or not. They're going to take a blood test. And so people are more familiar with them. They trust them a little bit more. So, how does the breath test work? How do you beat a case where there is a breath test? Well, you got to look at all the ways that it is set up to be used and make sure they did things correctly. So, there is a 15-minute waiting period before you can do a breath test. The 15 minutes has to begin, and you have to be what's called continuously observed, or being in the continuous presence of the officer for that period before the breath test. They want to make sure you don't belch or burp, and they always use those two terms. I don't know why they use those two terms. It feels like either one is good enough. It's the same thing, you know. But basically, they don't want to like introduce a whole lot of alcohol into your mouth or into your breath that is unnecessarily high. So if you were to burp right before you do a breath test, you're going to get a much higher reading than if you know, you're getting the breath all the way at the bottom of your lungs. It's called alveolar breath. Your alveoli are the little packets, or the pockets in your lungs where the blood mixes with the air. And so that's how they're getting. It's sort of like testing the alcohol in your blood, but through the deep lung breath exchange there. So, any case, they're supposed to wait for 15 minutes. If they can't prove the 15-minute waiting period, then the breath test shouldn't come into evidence because they can't prove that it was done under the proper conditions. And this is what you would do as an attorney in a 702 Rules of Evidence hearing or a Kelly Dalbert hearing on scientific or other expert evidence. They have to prove that it was the proper temperature. They actually heat your breath to a certain temperature so that when the light sensor that reads the amount of alcohol in your breath is reading it, it's reading it at a consistent rate. If that's not functioning properly, then you know, it's not going to work. They have to keep a reference sample of an alcohol-based liquid that goes injected into the machine to see if it's testing properly. So normally it's set at a 0.08, which is the legal limit. So they'll have a reference sample that has a known quantity of alcohol made by the technical supervisor, who is like the person in charge of the breath test instrument. That has to be within a few degrees of the 34 degrees Celsius temperature. The breath test machine takes two separate tests. You go up to the machine, it kind of buzzes, makes some noise. They turn it on, they type in your information into the machine. They type in your driver's license number to keep track of the different tests that are done. And then they put a mouthpiece on like sort of a handle on the end of it, and they tell you to blow and keep blowing, blow, 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 blow. They'll say just like that. And when you're done, you'll have blown out like all the air in your lungs, and that deep alveolar breath is what they're trying to get. If you don't blow consistently enough or hard enough on this instrument, then it's going to put out an error code, or at least it's supposed to. Uh, and so there's a lot of like internal checks that the machine has that it supposedly is not supposed to spit out a number unless all these things go right. You'll do two separate tests, and they're supposed to be within a certain range of each other on the two tests. Otherwise, it'll cancel out the test. And then it pushes through what's called an air blank in between each test to purge the system of any residual air. They don't keep these things. They don't typically keep the air that you blow into it for retesting. They're not keeping the air blanks. There's a lot of things in the instrument that are unknown, including the exact process of how it calculates your breath. That's a trade secret or a company secret to the intoxilizer company, and they don't release that to the general public. So literally every person who's been convicted of a DWI case with a breath test has been convicted based on a secret formula that only the intoxilizer company is keeping. Last couple things on our slide here to the left, if you're paying attention to that, is the intoxilizer operator. That is the police officer who uses the instrument and is familiar with the testing process. The intoxilizer technical supervisor is a person who manages that instrument. It's not going to be the police officer that's administering the test. It's going to be somebody who comes in from the Department of Public Safety, normally about once a month, to check on the instrument. They'll look for errors in the way things were handled. If there were tests that did not go through because the two reference samples were not measuring correctly, or the two tests were not measuring correctly, or the reference sample wasn't measuring correctly, they'll look through all those things. And in order to prove a breath test case, the state has to have both of these people come in and testify that they're part of the process, or they can't prove the 702 standard that things were done properly on this specific occasion. So that's a whole lot about breath tests. If you have any other questions, give us a call sometime. Hopefully, it's not about a case that you've got and you're just asking for educational purposes. Of course, all these videos are for that, educational only. If you have a real issue, call a lawyer, and we'll see you next time.